Imagine a painting that captivates the world with its mystery, a portrait of a woman whose faint smile seems to shift with every glance. That image might not have become a legend without the genius who unraveled the secrets of the human form. Leonardo da Vinci, born on April 15, 1452, in a small village near Vinci, Italy, was more than an artist. He was a thinker, obsessed with understanding how facial muscles moved, how light danced across skin, and how nature crafted its own masterpieces. To unlock these mysteries, he spent countless hours studying human remains, carefully dissecting them to trace every nerve and tendon that brought expressions to life. His approach to art was extraordinary, even in the Renaissance, an era when many sought to blend beauty with knowledge. A contemporary scholar once advised artists to envision the human body in layers, first the bones, then the muscles, the skin, and finally the garments. Leonardo embraced this idea and took it further. He didn't just paint. He deconstructed the world to grasp its essence. This passion for discovery spilled beyond his canvases into thousands of pages of notes, where he jotted down observations about everything from the structure of bird wings to the patterns of flowing rivers. When Leonardo wrote to the ruler of Milan seeking a position, he didn't lead with his artistic talents. Instead, he highlighted his skills as an engineer, boasting of his ability to design bridges, cannons, and war machines. Only as a passing note did he mention that he could also paint. This humility masked a man of staggering versatility, an artist, an inventor, an explorer whose curiosity knew no bounds. In his notebooks, you'd find questions like, "What is the shape of a woodpecker's tongue?" or "Why does water swirl in eddies?" It was this insatiable curiosity that made him unparalleled. Leonardo entered the world under unconventional circumstances. He was the illegitimate son of Ser Piero, a notary, and Caterina, a local peasant girl. As one biographer suggests, this may have been his stroke of luck. Had he been born within wedlock, he might have been groomed to follow his father's path into a rigid life of legal documents, a fate ill-suited to his boundless spirit. Instead, destiny granted him freedom. His early years were spent with his mother in the countryside, then later with his paternal grandparents, while his father pursued work in Florence. At age 12, following the death of his stepmother, Leonardo moved to Florence, a city pulsing with art and innovation. His illegitimacy barred him from the classical Latin education reserved for the elite. Rather than studying ancient texts, he attended a practical abacus school, learning mathematics tailored for trade. Latin remained a struggle throughout his life. He wrote mostly in Italian and, in a peculiar way, right to left, to avoid smudging the ink with his left hand. Even more unusually, he mirrored each letter as if crafting a secret code. When others mocked his lack of scholarly pedigree, he brushed them off. "Fools! I trust in experience, not borrowed words." At 14, his father secured him an apprenticeship with Andrea del Verrocchio, a renowned Florentine artist. In Verrocchio's workshop, Leonardo didn't just learn to paint. He learned to capture motion. He studied the master's sculptures, like one of a young warrior, where veins and muscles seemed to pulse with life. These lessons shaped his later works, such as a fresco depicting Christ's final meal with his disciples. In that scene, every figure comes alive through gesture. One recoils sharply, another grips the table, while the betrayer, shrouded in shadow, turns away. Leonardo quickly stood out in the workshop. In one painting, say an image of a youth with an angel and a fish. He added a fish that shimmered with such realism it outshone the efforts of his peers. A dog in the corner leapt with such vitality it seemed ready to bound off the canvas. In another piece, a depiction of a baptism. His angel, with its soft, flowing features, surpassed the sharper lines of Verrocchio's own work. Leonardo employed a technique later called sfumato, a gentle blending of edges that lent his figures depth and warmth. By 1477, at age 25, he opened his own studio in Florence. Commissions were scarce, though, and many projects remained unfinished, a habit that would follow him lifelong. His home buzzed with young assistants, including a lively character named Gian Giacomo, whom Leonardo dubbed Little Devil for his playful mischief. Their bond, it's thought, may have transcended friendship, a not uncommon dynamic in the artistic circles of the time. After 5 years of struggling for recognition in Florence, the city's ruler, Lorenzo de' Medici, sent Leonardo on a diplomatic errand to Milan. His task was to deliver a lyre, a musical instrument Leonardo had designed and mastered, to Duke Ludovico Sforza. But rather than merely fulfilling the mission, he seized the moment, offering the Duke his services as an engineer. In a now famous letter, he detailed his ability to craft machines for war and peace, mentioning his painting skills almost as an afterthought. The Duke accepted, launching a new chapter in Leonardo's life, 17 years under Milan's patronage. Here, he blossomed into a multifaceted genius. He was invited to advise on the construction of the city's grand cathedral, a Gothic marvel with a towering central dome. Though his design for the dome wasn't chosen, Leonardo applied his keen sense of harmony and proportion, concepts he explored in a sketch known as Man in a Circle. Inspired by the Roman architect Vitruvius, this drawing illustrated the body's ideal ratios, the span of the arms matching the height, the navel serving as the center of an imagined circle. Leonardo believed nature's laws could inform architecture. He sketched the human form with such precision that his anatomical drawings became groundbreaking. Dissecting dozens of corpses, he rendered the skull in detail, revealing cavities above the brows that no one had documented before. His fascination with the heart was especially profound. He proved it was a muscle, speculated that vessels stiffened with age, and observed how blood swirled in currents to aid the valves. This love of spirals carried over to his studies of water. Water mesmerized him with its power. He drew scenes of torrents tearing through landscapes and dreamed of taming them. Once, he proposed diverting the Arno River to weaken Florence's rival Pisa, designing a machine to shift millions of tons of earth. But his gaze reached higher, toward the sky. Watching birds, he noted, some wings beat faster downward than up. These insights fueled his visions of flight. He sketched machines with flapping wings and a screw-like rotor meant to lift a person aloft. Yet the technology of his era couldn't bring these dreams to life. While his aerial ambition stayed on paper, Leonardo excelled elsewhere, in map-making. At 50, he became chief engineer for Cesare Borgia, the ruthless son of Pope Alexander VI. For Borgia, he crafted a map of Imola so precise it redefined cartography. Using a compass and meticulous measurements, he produced a plan that let the warlord pinpoint enemy weaknesses. It wasn't just a drawing, it was a weapon. Until then, the Duke of Milan had prized Leonardo mostly as an artist. But in Milan, his next great project awaited, a fresco of Christ's Last Supper. This masterpiece would crown his talents, but that's a story for the next part. Leonardo da Vinci's arrival in Milan marked the beginning of a golden era. Under the patronage of Duke Ludovico Sforza, he found a stage vast enough for his talents. The Duke, a man of ambition and taste, saw in Leonardo not just an artist, but a visionary who could elevate Milan's prestige. In 1495, Leonardo was tasked with a project that would become one of his defining achievements. A grand mural depicting Christ's final meal with his disciples painted on the wall of a modest monastery church in the city's heart. This work, known today as The Last Supper, was no ordinary painting. Leonardo poured into it his mastery of motion and emotion. He chose the moment when Jesus declares a betrayer sits among them, and the scene erupts with life. The disciples react in waves. Some lean forward in shock, others twist in disbelief, while the guilty one shrinks into shadow, his hand clutching a hidden prize. Leonardo's brush captured their inner turmoil through subtle gestures, a skill honed from years of watching how people moved and felt. He once wrote that a painting should reveal the intentions of the soul through posture alone, and here he proved it. What set this mural apart was its design. Leonardo used a trick of the eye. Lines of the room's architecture converge at a single point on Christ's brow, pulling every gaze toward him. To achieve this, he drove a small nail into the wall and etched faint guides radiating outward, a method as precise as it was ingenious. Stand to one side, and the scene seems to spill into reality, as if you're seated at the table. Yet his process was erratic. Some days he painted from sunrise to dusk, skipping meals, while others he stood motionless, staring at the wall, brush untouched. The Duke's court buzzed with other demands, too. Leonardo was commissioned to craft a towering bronze statue of a horse, a tribute to Ludovico's late father. He threw himself into the task, sketching equine forms with meticulous care and building a massive clay model that awed onlookers. But fate intervened. In 1494, with French armies threatening Milan, the bronze meant for the statue was melted down for cannons. The clay horse met a sadder end, riddled with arrows by invading soldiers who used it as a target. The loss stung, but Leonardo's resilience shone through. Milan's turmoil eventually drove Ludovico from power in 1499, and Leonardo, now in his late 40s, became a wanderer once more. For over a decade, he roamed Italy, his talent sought by princes and warlords alike. His time with Cesare Borgia had already proven his worth as a military mind. His Imola map had turned cartography into a science. But his restless spirit craved more. He sketched machines to defy gravity, like a contraption with flapping wings inspired by bats, and pondered the chaos of nature, filling pages with visions of floods swallowing the earth. In 1516, a new patron emerged, King Francis I of France. The young monarch, captivated by Leonardo's intellect, invited him to his court in the Loire Valley. At 64, Leonardo settled into a charming red-brick manor near the king's castle, a haven where he could tinker and dream. Here, he turned his focus to a painting he'd carried with him for years, a portrait of a woman with an elusive smile, believed to be the wife of a Florentine merchant. This work, later called the Mona Lisa, became his obsession. The Mona Lisa was the culmination of everything Leonardo had learned. His sfumato technique, softly blending colors without harsh lines, gave her face an almost living glow. He understood light like a scientist, shaping shadows to carve depth into her cheeks and hands. Her eyes, locked on the viewer, seemed to follow you, a trick of perspective and shading he'd perfected. Most striking was her smile. Look straight at it, and it's subtle, almost reserved. Catch it from the corner of your eye, and it widens, as if she's in on a secret. This play of perception reflected his study of how the mind sees, a blend of art and discovery. Compared to an earlier portrait, say a young woman with a stiff pose and flat expression, this work radiated life. Leonardo kept it close, refining it endlessly, as if it were a mirror of his own evolving mind. In France, he also indulged his darker fascinations. His notebooks filled with drawings of deluges, raging waters crashing over towns, a reflection of nature's fury and perhaps his own sense of time running out. Leonardo's health began to falter. By 1519, at 67, his hand trembled, possibly from a stroke, though his intellect remained sharp. On May 2nd, he passed away in his manor, surrounded by a few loyal companions. Though not overtly pious, he left a will entrusting his soul to divine care, a quiet nod to the mysteries he'd spent his life unraveling. The Mona Lisa remained in his studio, unfinished yet eternal, a testament to a man who never stopped seeking. His life was a dance between art and science, each feeding the other. His paintings glowed with the precision of his dissections. Over 30 bodies explored to map the heart, the skull, the sinews. His inventions, from flying devices to war engines, sprang from the same curiosity that drove him to ask why rivers curled or how birds soared. Remarkably, he was largely self-taught. Denied a formal education, he built his knowledge through observation, turning the world into his classroom. Leonardo's legacy isn't just in his works, it's in his way of seeing. He watched the ordinary with extraordinary care, noting the swirl of a stream or the tilt of a wing. That habit of wonder made him timeless. Today, his spirit lives in those who chase questions, who blend creativity with reason. If his story stirs your own curiosity, say for math or mechanics, there are ways to follow his lead. Platforms like Brilliant, for instance, offer a hands-on path to explore such fields, turning abstract ideas into puzzles you can solve. Brilliant mirrors Leonardo's approach, learning by doing, not just listening. Whether you're tackling basic geometry or diving into artificial intelligence, it adjusts to your pace. I've been hooked on their coding lessons myself. Short bursts of 10 to 15 minutes, building simple programs from day one. Another gem is their course on how language models work, peeling back the curtain on tech like this very AI. You can try it free for 30 days at brilliant.org/newsthink-link below and snag 20% off a yearly plan if you stick with it. It's a modern echo of Leonardo's relentless quest to understand. From a village boy sketching bones to a sage painting enigmas, Leonardo da Vinci lived a life of endless discovery. His art illuminated science. His science enriched art. When he died, he left behind not just masterpieces, but a challenge to look closer, think deeper, and never stop wondering. For all of us at Newsthink, I'm Cindy Palm. Thanks for joining me on this journey.